Hey Internet, hope you're doing well. In today's project, I want to give you an introduction on how to create a language chatbot in Python. And the idea behind this project, this is at first a work in progress project, so it's not complete, but the idea is to figure out how companies like OpenAI, for instance, and Anthropic and so on, are able to build chatbots where we basically speak with our normal language, right, to an app, and then of course we get a result. So the idea in the future will not be that we will sit in front of some screen and then we enter some text, but the idea will be audio, right? So we speak with the LLMs and then they will give us the answer we want to have. And of course, not only the language model itself, but we will go one step further and we will have, of course, AI agents. And the agents, the idea behind the agent is that the agent can then do tasks for us, right? For instance, if I ask it something about the latest news, then of course the agent needs to have access to the latest news on the internet, for instance, right? Or if you say the agent should schedule something in your calendar, then of course the agent needs to have access to your calendar in order to do this. So of course this idea, the chatbot we're gonna explore here, can be extended with other functionalities. In this case, I have only one functionality, which will be getting the latest information about the stock price. But this is just an example. As I said, you can of course then extend this. But let's go through the code and let me show you how it works. So all this construct is based on Streamlit because I needed to have some web front end, and then I decided I go with Streamlit. And here you can also use Gradio, for instance, and there are other ones as well out there for Python, but this is really easy to set up. And here the idea is quite simple because what I do is I just record the audio. I have a button here, but of course this could also be triggered maybe something in a different way. So for instance, listening all the time, but the idea here is to click on a button, then I record my voice, I will ask the chatbot something, and then of course I have, in my case, a second button which I can click, and then this gets then sent to the OpenAI API, and then of course the question gets answered and then the text is responded. But of course you can extend this, as I said. For instance, you can say that you want to have the language model, the chatbot, answer you directly, right, and with just audio instead of having the text. The idea is just to give you a brief introduction on how it works, and then of course we go through this and then you can maybe play around with it yourself, but that's it. Okay, so let's get started. Let's just try it out first. Let's say I want to know the latest price of, let's say, the Microsoft stock, right? Okay. What is the latest price of Microsoft? And you can see that here is the Streamlit application. I mean, you can also play around it, play the sound again, what you asked. It's just recorded the audio. And now if I go to transcribe, what should happen actually in the background is that as you can see here, the voice, the audio which I have recorded is sent to the Whisper API from OpenAI, and then it's first transcribed to text. That's the first thing, right? So you need to convert the audio into text. So you can see here, I also printed this. It's just easier to see whether the translation was correct actually, and it is the case here. And then I can now analyze the transcription, which means that this question is now sent to the OpenAI API again, but this time not the audio, not the Whisper API, but the normal large language model API, so GPT-4o. And then of course this gets then, well, hopefully a tool call back. A tool call means that the agent, or in this case the LLM, is smart enough to figure out, okay, I can't answer this directly, I do not have access to the internet in here, but I have a tool at my side and I can use this tool in order to figure out the latest stock price. So let's give it a try, let's see whether it works, and then let's have a look at the code. So let's go to analyze transcription, and then we wait, of course, now it's running, and you can see here the latest price of Microsoft is $470 and so on, and if you need further analysis and so on and so on, okay? Of course, the answer itself could modify it depending on what kind of prompt you give it, right? But you all know that probably, but let's have a look at the code now. So you can see that the application itself works. Of course, it's not perfect, but as I said, it's a work in progress. And the idea was really to figure out how that works. And obviously you can see that, at least from my point of view, it works exactly the way I created it. So let's go to the code editor. Let's go in here and let's have a look. Now, of course, we need to import a few dependencies here, and we get started, of course, with Streamlit here. Sound device. Sound device is just so we can record the audio, right? And NumPy and the SciPy are a wave file and so on. It's also just to store the audio, so recorded audio with my microphone here locally, temporarily, and then use this, write it to a file, and then send this file actually to the Whisper API to transcribe it to text. So otherwise, of course, we need to have the OpenAI API, and this means that you need to have some credits to use the API. So you can upload, for instance, $5 and you can play around with it for quite a long time. And that's what I did, for instance. But of course, you can also use, for instance, Anthropic or other APIs that will also work. Of course, kind of the same way, because I think the API most often is kind of the same, the way it's structured, which is great. So you can easily change models as well if you want. But that's why I use these ones. And then, of course, this is my tool. I'm using Y Finance here. That's why I'm using this one here. You can also import, for instance, if you want to play around with it, weather API, that would be an option. Or, as I said, other kinds of APIs. So actually, you can give the agent probably all the options in the world. You just need to have, well, give it, for instance, some credentials so it can connect to your email account, for instance, and other kinds of options, and you can extend its functionality. That's the idea behind that. In this case, the only function it has is this one here. So it's called quoting here. It just needs a ticker, so Microsoft ticker, and then in our case, and then of course it's just looking up the ticker, and then it returns the current price, right? Of course, it can return more, but this is just the idea behind that. Now, of course, if you use a function in here in OpenAI, you need to define this. And of course, yeah, these are called tools, but in the end of the day, these are Python functions, which the model can execute. So the idea is that you specify the tool structure, which looks like that. So this can be looked up on the OpenAI docs as well, but it's always the same. The idea is what it is, a kind of function, and then you need to specify the name. You need to give it a description. So what can this function do? So this is important for the model, because the model needs to find out, okay, if I get a request from the user. Now, what should I do with this request? Should I answer it immediately, or are there tools, for instance, to my site, which I can use, which can then answer this question if I can't answer it directly? And in this case, OpenAI has not access to the public internet, so it does not know what is the current stock price of Microsoft. But it has these tools, which we define here, and this tool, for instance, here gets the current price of a stock. And when we ask it, for instance, what's the stock price of Microsoft, then it can take a look at the tools. So that's the idea behind the agent. So it's not only the LLM, but the LLM equipped with tools, which means it's an agent. And then it can look up, okay, I have this tool, and this tool can give me a latest stock prices. So in this case, I can use this tool in order to answer the user question. That is the idea. Now, of course, we need to specify then the properties. The properties is just, what does this function need? In this case, you can see the quoting needs a ticker, like what is the stock price of Apple, what is the stock price of Microsoft. So it needs a company, right? And not only the company actually, but it needs to have the ticker of the company. So for instance, for Microsoft, it's MSFT. For Apple, it's AAPL, I think, and so on. So it also needs to convert the company, which is given, into the ticker first, and then it needs to call the function. And we specify it here. We say it's a function. We say what the function can do. We say the properties it needs. It is the ticker, which is here the ticker symbol up there. And it's a string type, and then the description itself. So the ticker symbol for the stock. And also is required here, because it needs to have this ticker. So then we just, use the API key here, which I call from my environmental variables, which I have in here, a .env file. Of course, you can also put in the key here directly, but of course, then you should not share your file with anyone, otherwise other people can use your key. So then I instantiate a client in here, client object, OpenAI. The key is given up there, and then I have various functions. So for instance, for record the audio, which is this one here, which is just recording the microphone, right? That's the first part. So it needs to record the microphone, and I'm doing this with this function. Then next I need to save this file. I also save it here. Now there I had to play around a little bit, because at the beginning I saved it in a quite different format, and then the API from OpenAI was not, the Whisper API was not happy with it, so I need to give it a try a few times and play around with it, but this works for me, and you can of course use this here as well, or you can maybe find a different way to save it in a different format. So, but this is these two functions. So we record the audio, then after recording it, we need to save the audio as a file, so we can then send this file or read this file and send it to the Whisper API. And this is what happens here. So there we have our OpenAI client. We have audio transcriptions. This is the new, in this case, at this point in time, the new call or way to call the Whisper API. Former ways was a little bit different, but they modified it, and that's a new one. And this works for the Whisper 1. I'm using this model here. There are probably other models as well, but I'm using this one. And I just sent the file itself, which is this one here, the audio file, which I'm giving the function. And then I just return the text. So this basically converts my audio then into the text format which we need in order to send it then to the LLM. The LLM can then use this text in order to do its normal behavior, just get the user question and then decide, in this case, what kind of tool it should use, and then of course return the answer. And that is what happens here. So because I'm working with Streamlit, I need to store it in session states, which I'm doing here. So if it's not in session state, I just save it in a variable or in the session state itself, so it remains part of the session. Of course, it could be later, of course, interesting if you have some kind of history, right? You want to store the messages in memory and so on, so the model still knows what you have asked maybe a few questions before and so on. But then you can see here, this is just the interface, so record audio, and then if I write record speak now, that's what you have seen at the beginning when we give it a try, this work in progress project here. And then we just store this in the session state, that's what I have here, and then we just again write this as buffering. So then more interesting probably is then after we stored the audio, then you can see here if we have a session state, so if we have recorded audio, then we have saved it in the session. So that means that someone has asked something via audio, and only if that's the case, then you have seen that the other button appears, and that's what happens here. So the button transcribe appears here, that's the first one, and this just saves the file, actually the audio file. And then we also have, if I go a little bit down here, that's the second one here. So now we have the messages here, and this is what I meant before when I said the answer which we get, of course, we can modify it a little bit, because here I do not really do a lot of prompt engineering. Just say you're a system, you're a helpful assistant, and then you analyze transcribed text. And then you have a user here, please analyze this transcription and provide insights, and then we use the session state, so transcription. So of course you can make it here, for instance, you can give it a role. Let's say you are an experienced stock investor like Warren Buffett or something else, and then you know exactly how to analyze stocks and so on, and then you can give it a little bit more, maybe not only stock price, but maybe also investment decision or anything like that. But as I said, this is just prompt engineering. You can play around with this the way you want it. The idea here is just to convert this audio into text first, then get it back from the Whisper API, and then the second option, which is this one here, then just ask the model now to convert this text into a result, so a real output, so answer my question basically. And that's what happens here. So I say client chat completion great, and you can see I'm using the mini model here, so because it's cheaper, and for this purpose it works. But of course, the more sophisticated your project is, probably you might have to also give it a try that you use the GPT-4o model, or maybe a traffic model, for instance, Claude Sonnet, anything like that, right? With the open source models, I played around with it with function calling. I was not happy with Llama 3.1 8 billion. Maybe it's better for you. You can give this a try as well, or choose another model, or maybe you have enough resources to run a bigger model, like the 70 billion models and so on. I did not try that, but with the 8 billion model, the open source model, I was not happy. So that's it for that. Okay, so then again, a first choice response. The idea is that if the function decides to use a tool, or the agent decides to use a tool, then the agent itself just does not return an answer, but it returns a tool call. And this is what happens here. So I just check whether I get a tool call. This just means, does the model decide to use a tool, the agent? And in this case, if that's the case, then I can check what kind of tools are available. In this case, I only have one tool, right, which is quoting, which is getting the stock price. But of course, you can add there additional tools. But if you do this, then you need to define it, of course, also up there in the tool description here, of course. And you, of course, need to provide the tool, the way it works. For instance, entering data in the database. That could also be a tool, but it could be anything. So this is that, and also for all my social media friends out there, of course, it could also be, for instance, posting on social media, anything like that. But this is just the case here. Okay, it was just a few examples. Now, we specify what are the functions, and then if we have a tool call, we just get the function name, we get the function arguments. This is what we get from the model. And then we call the function, which just means that we actually now get the stock price from Microsoft in this case. And then we just append, in this case, to the model itself, or to the messages for the model. Then we had a tool call. The tool itself, the role is tool. This is the role you have in OpenAI. I think in Anthropic, as far as I know, it's not a tool role, it's a user role instead. But just to mention this. And then you get the function name, you get the function response. So this response here, this would be already the stock price of Microsoft. Meaning the model decided to use a tool. The tool was called, the price was then returned, and now we give the price to the model as well. This is the idea behind that, because now it has actually the price, and now it can answer our question based on the price it was given by the tool call. So that's why I have a second response here, this one here, and then this just means that in this case I give it now all the messages with the new appended tool messages, so the tool calls. and then I return the content here. And by the way, I just have here a for loop, just mean that, of course, I could have several tool calls. For instance, I could, in my case, I only have one tool, but I could ask in the same question, for instance, several stock prices. So what is the stock price of Microsoft, of Apple, and of Google, for instance, right? Then, of course, I would have 3 tool calls, because it would have identified 3 stocks, and then I would ask the price for 3 stocks, so it would call the tool 3 times. So that's why I have a for loop here, just to mention that. Okay, so this is that, and then basically I just get in this case, the content itself, which is this one here, and I also have else here, so just in case it decides not to use a tool, if I ask some kind of question which can't be answered with a tool, but with its normal knowledge base, for instance, then of course I could just write just the analysis itself, so the answer of the large language model. And finally, of course, I just write this as text, and I also have an exception here because this is also in a try block, but that's basically it. So we went through here. It's about 156 lines, but of course at the beginning there are a few imported lines and this function definition and so on, so the code is not that long. But that's basically it for this work in progress thing here, which I wanted to share with you. So, and as you can see, it works exactly that way. As I said, you can of course improve this, and this is just a really early version, but the idea is now that, just to show you how that basically works, to have audio, record the audio, then transcribe it into text, because the model itself needs text at the end, and this basically also happens with, for instance, the OpenAI audio app, which is available, but the idea is exactly the same. So they have some audio which you, tell when you speak to your mobile phone, for instance, right? And what happens is that this audio is then converted into text, the way you've seen here. For instance, OpenAI probably uses the Whisper as well, because it's their model. And then this is then sent to their models, which we do here as well, and then there's text returned, and then the only thing which they also did, of course, then later on, if they have an audio response, then of course you need to convert what you get here back into audio, and then have some kind of voice. There are several voices out there probably, which you can use to return this to you. And this can be done also here. Of course, I convert the text, where the response of the LLM, into audio, and then I can return this as well, right? And of course, yeah, I can make this or increase this further to create a full functional chat app, but as I said, it's quite long, this video already. Hopefully, first, thank you for all who stay to the end, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you want to see more like this, let me know. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and if you haven't done so far, I highly appreciate if you give this video a like, if you share it, and also if you subscribe to the channel. Thanks a lot, take care, and hopefully see you in the next video. Until then, best guys.